Oh, okay.
Um, Hi, everybody. I'm here with Dave Chesson. He is a military veteran, a husband, father of three lovely children. I'm not going to repeat what you wrote on your website about them being a little wild, but when he's not doing dad things, he's an avid book marketer. After years of learning, practicing, and experimenting with book markets and online stores like Amazon, he started to understand why certain books succeed while others didn't. He's also started to understand what makes Amazon tick and why they choose to show one book more on their marketplace than another. And then he chose to create Kindlepreneur and share that information with the world. Dave's work in both publishing and book marketing has been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur, Alley, Huffington Post, and even MarketWatch. He's worked with many New York Times bestselling authors in multiple genres and topics like Ted Decker, Orson Scott Card, Kevin J. Anderson, and more. He's also a paid consultant to major publishing companies, helping with digital sales, advertisement marketing, and sales page optimizations. Just a couple of fun facts. He is a triathlon runner. He used to be a nuclear engineer and submariner. He's fluent in Mandarin Chinese. He was a military diplomat, and he loves the Red Sox. And we're so lucky that he's agreed to speak with us. So thank you, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be here.
Was all that correct?
Yeah, pretty much. Yep.
Wonderful. So tell us, what is Kindlepreneur?
Well, you kind of talked about it where when I first started writing books, I really had this aching question of trying to figure out why is it that Amazon's choosing to show that book over my book? Why is it that, like I know my book is better than this one, and yet there it is. And so when I started to analyze and try to study and understand Amazon, I gained all this great insight. And when I was looking online, I didn't see anything out there that really kind of talked about it. So that's what started my idea to create kindlepreneur.com, which is a website that's devoted to teaching people about self-publishing online, the book market, and understanding Amazon and how it works. And so that way, my goal is that when an author reads one of my articles, they'll not only learn something, but they'll actually be able to turn around, take action, and see results.
Perfect. So the program, I understand, is free. I have it. Um, Run us through a little bit of how it works, if you
With
could.
Kindlepreneur,
Yep.
well, Kindlepreneur is a free website. So all of my content up there is absolutely free. If you go to the site, you can look around. You can also, there's a section right on the homepage where you can basically start looking for what it is that you want to learn. So if it's in the stages of writing, if it's the stages of actually putting your book together, or, just understanding how to sell your book, you can click there and see the pertinent articles. Also on Kindlepreneur too, I have two free tools that authors can access. The first is the Kindle calculator. That allows you to, using kind of the instructions there, you can actually see how well other books are doing, how much money those books are making. And then the second thing is a tool called the book description generator. When you go to write your book description, there's actually some HTML coding that you can do to make certain words bigger or bolder and all that. The problem is that authors don't, most of us are not HTML coding programmers. So we created this really cool tool where you can put your book description in there. You can highlight things, make them look the way you want, and then it will generate the code. And you can just put that into Kindle Direct Publishing and have the book description exactly like you saw it. So
Fabulous. So tell us the importance of understanding Amazon algorithms and how your program helps.
yeah, so the way that Amazon works is that they want, when people go to Amazon and they type a phrase into the search bar, Amazon wants to do their best to try to put the best product in front of them. I mean, can you imagine, like, Amazon would not survive if people typed in war fantasy book and all Amazon showed was like erotica. Like, people would get discouraged, they'd stop using the store. Like, that's a really bad thing for them. The other thing too, though, is that Amazon wants to show them the product not only that makes them happy, but the one that makes them buy. And so their entire website is devoted to trying to figure out how to make Amazon more money. And that's by putting the right product in front of it. And so we as authors have many steps that we can do in order to help Amazon think of our book when it comes time to present our book to shoppers. And that comes down to understanding your keywords. That's understanding how to put your keywords, where to put them, the information that you can send Amazon so as to influence their decision. And so we've got a lot of articles on Kindlepreneur. I also have a paid tool called Publisher Rocket, that the existence of that software is to help understand what it is that shoppers type into Amazon, as well as what those words are, how many people search for it, and whether or not that's a good phrase for you to target.
Perfect. So typically, what have your users found as results after using your program?
Well, that really depends. The key is this, is that there are certain books out there, like, for example, somebody wrote a book on how to use a fry cooker what are those? I always get the term mixed up, but you know, when you have a trailer, but it's one of those trailers you live in,
RV?
RV, but it's like a different word, or you know, because there's different levels. But
Mobile
anyways,
home?
they wrote mobile home, I think was the correct
Okay.
term, but they wrote a book all about that. Now, you know, what happened is that no matter what you do, there are only a certain number of people on the market that would even consider a book like that. I don't own an RV, nor do I own a fry cooker. So no matter how great you do on your cover, so you're just not going to reach me. And see, there is a limited finite market that exists for fry cookers on RVs. Okay. Whereas you go to other books, you know, self-help, dealing with depression, you have a much larger potential. Okay. So one of the things that I tell people is that actually one of my favorite uses of our tool is that before you go to write the book, go ahead and do that research. Use the tool to find out how many people are actively searching for fry cookers on RVs. And then at that point, you now know for a fact that if you do choose to write that book, you will only have a so-called market, a small existing market. And now ask yourself, do I really want to spend all that time, money, and energy putting together a book that only has the potential of selling maybe 10 copies total? That doesn't say, it's not to say that you can't write that book, but it does give you that indication of what to expect from Amazon. So the tool in the beginning can be a really good way of figuring out what to expect from your book idea. But then after you've written your idea, you know, you've created your book, you can use the tool to then find out, you know, okay, great. Now, how do I best position my book in front of those people? And again, that comes down to the size of your existing market. You know, it may help you to sell a couple more extra copies for your RV fry cooker book, but it's, you know, it's going to be very different than the person who's writing in, say, second chance romance,
Right.
or someone who's writing on, you know, how to deal with PTSD, you know, or how to go back to school for your master's. You know, these are all prime examples where authors, you know, either understood their market better and made better decisions, or were able to actually get through the intense amount of competition out there and shine and actually show up to shoppers as they show up.
Fantastic. I'm already know what I'm going to do because I'm writing a nonfiction book and I'm going to absolutely check out that tool. What are have you heard of any extraordinary results that people have experienced from using the program?
Oh, absolutely. We actually have a testimonial page on Publisher Rocket. If you go to publisherrocket.com/testimonials, and this is where, you know, people have chosen to fill it out. We also have a whole list of where we found what I call testimonials in the wild, where, you know, people were talking about it on Facebook or social media, Twitter, and, you know, we just grabbed the screen capture of that, just showing exactly people not who are not connected with us, just talking about it with other authors. Same thing with Reddit too. Usually that's a crazy place, but that's been, you know, again, then you can find those words straight from customers without any prodding from us whatsoever.
That's great. And for the Rocket program, the Rocket tool,
Publisher Rocket.
what's the pricing on that?
It's just $97. That's it. It's not a
Okay.
subscription. It's not, you know, this added fee. And that includes all updates and feature updates and additions. So one of the other things that it does too, that authors really like, is that it actually lists every category that Amazon has for books and ebooks. And even more importantly, it will tell you how many books that day you need to sell in that category in order to be number one. What authors don't know is there are actually 14,000 different Amazon categories for books and ebooks. when you go to publish your book for the first time, right on Amazon KDP, when you go to click on add a category, you're going to see this box and you're going to see this list of categories. Those aren't actually Amazon categories. Those are called BISACs. And BISACs are this international standard categorization code. There are only 4,700 BISACs. So when authors go to select their categories, their BISACs, if you will, they think it's categories, but it's BISACs. Amazon puts them in only, in that 4,700. But like we talked about, there are 14,000 other categories. So if you don't know about that and you don't know how to report the categories you actually want to be in, you're stuck in the same categories everybody else is in. So what we've done is that with Publisher Rocket, you can click on categories and you can easily find the right categories that will fit your book. And many of the times, these are categories that most authors don't know about or targeting. So this gives you a much higher chance of a bestseller status. And if people don't know, you can actually get Amazon to add your book to 10 categories just by contacting them. And we have steps for that as well. So
Oh,
you can
wow.
do your keywords for research. You can find your categories. So it can be a really powerful tool for 2 very easy ways to get visuals on
Absolutely.
Amazon.com.
Absolutely. Now, I know that Ruth, who's here, has got Rocket, and I think she had a couple of questions. Did you want to ask those questions, Ruth, after hearing?
So Dave, hi.
Hi, Ruth.
I'm going to tell you that I think I'm one of the early users of Rocket,
Okay.
and I am a stepchild because I do not. While I can work with technology, Rocket kind of scares me.
Okay.
I don't know why. I think there's a part of it is impatience and not true. So I write historical romance, basically medieval. And on my contemporary side, I write romantic suspense. I've done some analysis, but I tend to step away and not redo it. So I've done it once or twice for each category. I'm not an overly prolific writer. I don't write a lot of books in a year. So so my question, that's a long lead in to ask the question, how often do you go back to reanalyze?
All right. Well, with regards to categories, the moment I hit publish is the moment I turn around and I ask Amazon to add me to 10 categories. I believe 10 categories is more than enough. Granted, out of 14,000, there are a lot of great categories you will find that actually fit your particular flavor of that genre. From Arthurian to medieval to, you'll find medieval in different main genres, not just in, say it's fantasy or romance that you look, you'll also find it in literary fiction. And so when you start to see the options that you have, once you take those and you've added your book to those 10, I don't see much reason for anybody to have to constantly change their categories. You now are a part of 10. You have a higher chance to hit bestseller status multiple times throughout the year, not just on the first launch. You're getting your book in front of 10 categories instead of just the normal 2. So I would say you don't need to change after that. 10 is more than enough, I say. So with that, that's with your particular categories. With regards to keywords, there is a bit of a thing there. So first off is, if you're doing your keyword research, highly recommend checking out my article on Kindle keywords for fiction. Or if you just type into Google fiction keywords, it should show up number 1. And it explains the thought process by which a fiction author should do their research for keywords. Nonfiction and fiction are 2 very different beasts. When it comes to nonfiction, it's about pain points, solutions, demographics, and what we call exciting words. So for nonfiction, why is the person coming to learn this thing? What do they hope to accomplish? Who is this for? So, it's like, lose weight fast for busy moms. These are the kind of phrases.
Let me write that one down. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Right. Because that's the thing. It's not about losing weight. It's about, I really want to lose weight fast. And then more importantly, I need it for my lifestyle. So I'm going to put a quantifier in there that says this is who I am. So I always call that the demographic. I'll go back to one of the examples I said earlier, which is going back to school. Had an author wrote a book all on going back to school or how to go back to school. The problem is that if they'd done their research, they would have found out that going back to school for your master's, going back to school for your GED, going back to school because you're retired. These are all completely different books, and nobody wants to buy a book that is ambiguous as to whether or not it's for them. So you need to put in what I call a demographic generator. So this is a part of your keywords. Now with fiction, on the other hand, it is not about pain point solution, exciters or demographics. It's about describing the story in a way that gives the story you want. And so and again, this article lays it out and gives you step-by-step on how to approach this, but it talks about, timelines and settings. Okay. That's a big descriptor for a story. If I say Western, I just said the word Western, right? But we all know what I'm talking about. If I say Caribbean, there's a couple of things. Could be pirates, or it could be, a mystery. But those two words immediately kind of put ourselves in a time period. If I use the term gas lamp, which by the way, that is actually a term for a time period, and it's connected with, what is that?
Steampunk.
Kind of steampunkish, but it's actually it's not so much steampunk in the terms of it's the time period where London started to use actual gas lamps.
Mhm.
And so it's actually a very highly growing area. But the point though is these words are very powerful just to put in time and place. And that already talks about the set. So settings and time periods, then character role. So your main character, what's different about him or her? Is it an ex-cop? Is it an ex-murderer? Is this person, and this is where I love about the power of words. Is it a mutant? Is it a superhero? Is it they're all somewhat the same, right? Especially to comic book readers. A mutant is X-Men, superhero, and you can go through all the different ways you can describe people with superpowers. But the word I choose changes the entire meaning of the story. Same thing with like men who have magical powers. I could call it sorcerer, necromancer, mage, wizard, magician. All are technically the same, but all are a completely different genre. So how do you describe the main role or the main character? The next area is what I call the catalyst. Okay. So you may say that this is a post-apocalyptic book. Okay. But what started the apocalypse? Are we talking dragon? Are we talking disease? Are we talking, meteorological? Are we talking, World War II, or World War III level? What starts the journey? What sets the hero on there? Is it, finds new love again? Is it, father is murdered? What begins the story? And then the last one that I absolutely love is what's called the flavor of the genre. Okay. So you may say to yourself, I'm romance. And not to be super cliche here, but there's like 50 shades of romance, right? I mean, we can go all the way from the left to the right, and the left being, wholesome Christian, to all the way to the right being steamy erotica, really interesting terms that I won't say here. And the key is that to a romance reader, it's not about it being a romance. It's what kind of romance? Like, let's face it, the wholesome Christian romance reader is absolutely going to add words to their search term to make sure they don't get the bondage or the steamy erotica. They're going to say something to ensure it's the wholesome Christian. So it may be, a murder mystery, wholesome Christian romance, because they started with murder mystery. Then they saw like, all right, too many women in skin tight. This is not cool, and then they're like, let me put in a phrase to make sure it cuts out all the chaff, as we call it, and now I can see the kind of book I want. Now, when you take these ideas, you get your time settings, your characters, you get your catalyst, you get your genre flavor, and you start doing this research, you can come up with some amazing terms and phrases to not only for your keywords, but then pairing it with, say, Publisher Rocket, which will also help you to build out, because like I didn't know what Gaslamp was until Rocket showed me. But you can start to see, hey, you know what? People really do describe this kind of book. They really use those words. And now you can choose those phrases with confidence and put them into your 7 Kindle keyword boxes to help Amazon say, okay, they think their book fits that. Lots of people are asking for this. Let's go ahead and show that book to those customers. And so there's that process. The next process, I would say too, is that I have an article, and again, this is all on our tutorial page as well, but there's an article that says, well, that talks about how to change your keywords. And it talks about when you might want to change your keywords or what kind of things you might want to do. But if you want to start changing your keywords, my recommendation is, and I'm just going to jump the gun on that information, but is that choose 2 Kindle keyword boxes at a time. Don't change them all at once. Because what you may find out is one of those keyword phrases or one of those boxes is actually generating a lot of your sales. That it may be the main driving factor that is bringing in constant, book buyers every day. And if you change it, you lose that one. So what I like to do is I'll change 2 at a time. And then I'll literally look at my sales report, give it 3 or 4 days and see if it was an uptick or if it went down. And if it went up, then sweet, I'll move to the next 2. But if it went down, I'll be like, okay, I'll paste the original ones back in and I'll move to another 2. And so this gives me a systematic process by which to see what is the most optimized version. Now, for a lot of authors, like if you're seeing a lot of success and you're where you're at, I would not suggest changing them. If you are writing in a series, though, you may want to consider that, because just the knowledge of certain phrases really doing well for the first book, those are keywords you should use again for book 2 and book 3, because when book 2 comes out, you want it to show up in the path that book 1 showed up. So it gets in front of the previous shoppers as well as the kind of shoppers you want. And so again, I'm sorry, that was a lot of information I just
No,
shot
it's
towards
great.
you.
That's great. I have
But
one other question.
that's how,
I have
yeah.
another question, Dave.
Okay.
So I'm a hybrid author. I
Okay.
have books with a publisher and I do publish on my own. Have
Nice.
you, how do other authors who have spoken to you handle going to their publisher with information about changing categories and keywords?
Yeah, sadly, that really comes down to how the publishers operate. Also, how much power you have with the publishers. So, like I said, like was said in my bio, I actually am a paid consultant to publishing companies, and most of the time I'm brought in. I've got a lot of insight on how those companies actually work and think. Um, and this may turn this episode into like kind of the cold hard truth of publishing
Please.
companies. Um, and when it comes to them, all right, so let me explain what goes on inside of publishing companies, and this is a majority of them. This isn't like everyone. I'm sure there are some great ones out there, but I'm going to build up the story first, and then it will help you to understand what really is happening when you ask for changes. When publishing companies, like, they have a quota every quarter, they have a certain number of books that they can produce or they will produce. However, though, inside of that quota, they only have a certain number that they're actually going to put a lot of effort towards. Okay. So say, for example, their quota is 25 books. However, though, they only have the true resources to give it their all on 2 out of the 25. Now, what a publishing company wants to know is that when they select the 25, their real question is will this make us money? All right. That's what they want to know. They're not selecting a book because they liked it. Okay. You hope that they like it and it also equates to more money. But what they want to know is, will it make them more money? There are a lot of decisions that go into this. This isn't just random. All right. The first thing is first is what's trending in the market. They are, a lot of these companies use Publisher Rocket. They have their own, ways of doing it as well, but they are seeing what's trending in the market. If you had submitted a sparkly vampire romance, teen romance book back like right after Twilight came out, it wouldn't have mattered if it was crap. They would have signed it because those things were selling like hotcakes. And if they could just get their hands on a book that was serviceable, they would have done it. And so they're always tracking what's hot because that's a big factor. For fantasy, lit RPGs really taken off. If only you submitted a lit RPG book, a couple months ago, you'd have gotten a good deal and they would have been excited about it. All right. So they're first looking at what's really hot in the market. The second thing is they're looking at the author. If you're a brand new author, that means that, you might not know anything about marketing, and the illusion that you're going to get a book deal with a publishing company and that they're going to actually do great marketing and you don't have to do a thing, like, that's rare. So they want to know, can this person market? Does this person have a background, or a backing? How many people on your email list are there? That's gold. I've seen them flat out say they didn't particularly like a book, but because the author had 25,000 people on their email list, they were like, sign them. Same thing with social media following. Like, these things help them to say, hey, if this author has that many people on their email list, we can assure that they're going to sell books on their own. And that's a good thing too. So they're taking that into consideration. They're also taking into consideration your previous work with them. Has it been successful? They also are looking at, are there counter offers? Are they trying to, if it's just you and they don't have to compete with anybody, they'll sign you. Whereas if there's others and they know that like Hachette or one of those other ones are like vying for you, then they get into a pricing war, and when they do a pricing war, that's a good thing for you, because they're ready to, if they do sign you, they want to go all out on making sure they get their money back. All right. So that's a little bit of what it's like. And then when they have their 25, they can only really select 2. And again, I'm just making up those arbitrary numbers for this time being, but they have a certain number that they're actually going to do. Well, that now comes down to, let's look at the 25 and ask ourselves, which ones do we think is the best bet? Okay. Now, if Stephen King is one of them, he's always going to win because he's always the best bet for them. Okay. It's just, or same thing. If there's some author that has knocked it out of the park before for them, then why not go with that? Or when they look at it all, they finally decide. So now 2 out of the 25 are actually going to get their attention. Maybe they have enough money to give somewhat of attention for like 5 or 10 of them, but the last, 12 books, they got produced. That's what it is. They got produced, and then they go to the authors and like, hey, try to hit this up. We have this sales quota we want you to hit. This is what our goal is. And then if you don't hit that, like, they don't return your emails. They stop talking. And like, you can try as you must. And it kind of gets to a point where it almost feels like they hold your book ransom because they have the rights to it. And that you want to give it's all, but you don't have control. Like, you can't tell them what to do. You can't say, please take these actions, please do this. And they're just like, we've moved on. We're on quarter 3 now, and so it becomes a bit of a problem. So all of that to say, to come back to the real question here, is that if you find yourself in one of those top 2 books, heck yeah, they'll listen to you. If you hit your quota, and you're continuing to make the money, yeah, they'll probably listen to you. But if you were like one of those books that fell to the bottom, or you're ones that didn't make their, what I call their spotlight, or sometimes even call it the Eye of Sauron for the Lord of the Rings fans out there, if you're not in their focus, they generally will not take the extra time to make those changes. And it can be really agonizing. It can be a pain. So that is one particular case that exists. Now, another time where the information has really helped me is that I was working with an author, and I don't have permission to give the information or the name of the author, but they were pitching, if you will, their memoir, their military memoir. And this was like a very big person in the military. They were pitching their memoir, and one of the things that helped was coming in with the research and telling the publishing company that, hey, look, this is what keywords, are working. This is why it's a good fit. Here's, the idea. It also actually helped with the decision on the title, because when we knew what people were searching on Amazon for, we wanted to make sure the title truly fit in their eyes. If you describe lower back pain as a sharp, needle-like pinprick in the lower back, and your title is called, exterminate or destroy sharp needle-like pains in your back, you're probably going to get the sale because your book is speaking the language of the market. And so it's helped publishing companies make decisions on book titles and to make decisions on books because there was data to help kind of convince them that this is the right decision.
What a great idea to be able to use the information that you can get out of your program to go and put that in your query. Because that really shows a publisher that you've done your research.
Absolutely. And on top of that too, they're doing the same thing more so every day. But like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago or so, publishing companies kind of thumbed their nose at the whole information on Amazon. It was kind of like, it was like holding a rabid dog by the ear. Like they you want to let go, but you don't dare let go. They understood the power of sales coming in from Amazon. But at the same time, business and publishing has always been done the way it used to be done. But now over the past 4 or 5 years, they're starting to realize, oh my goodness, like you either live in this new world or you die in the old world. And one of the things I'm really seeing, which is kind of exciting, is, and I hate to say this, they used to look down on self-published authors. Like they used to treat it like trash. Like you people, you're not good enough to be published authors is what it was. Now what they're doing, and this is super smart, they're looking at self-published authors as free agency. Okay. And what I mean by that is in sports, right? When you have a great player, you know, or you have players that have proven themselves, but they're not on a team, right? And so then the teams go and pick up that free agent. Well, what better way for a publishing company to actually start by looking at self-published authors who have success and saying, you know what, instead of guessing on whether or not they can write a good book, we could see clearly that they have 500 5-star reviews. We could see clearly that they're making sales. We could see clearly that they can make a good decision. Why even like they almost don't even have to read your book. They just know the numbers are there. And so now publishing companies are saying, let's go find those self-published authors. Let's go impress upon them why or how we can help. And now they're starting to get it. And I'm seeing more and more of that. I'm seeing more self-publishers being approached by publishing companies than the other way around because they're getting it. And they can start to offer more. And on top of that, too, most of the time when they do this, they have to offer upfront money, which means they pay the author, you know, for the book before the book is written. And when they do that, they've now put their money where their mouth is because they are ready to, you know, because they just paid you $50,000 or $100,000. Like they're going to work to make sure they get their money back. You know, they're going to help you to sell that book because they don't want to write that off. So it's a really good situation in that respect as well.
Wow, that's great. Now, would they purchase pre-published books or just your next book?
That really depends. I've also seen too, a major industry that's popping up is international agents buying your international rights. So say, for example, you wrote your book and it's very successful in the United States. I have seen international agents for like Korea come up and say, hey, we love your book. We know the Korean market. Would you sell the rights to your book to the Korean market? And, or, you know, or can we be a publisher for the Korean version of your book? And what's really awesome about this is you're probably not making any money whatsoever in Korea, but this publishing company comes in, they're like, yep, we will translate it. We also know how to do covers. And let me tell you, I have learned very quickly that just because I know American covers does not mean I know Japanese or Indian or, you know, any of the other countries. I have been wrong on every guess for covers, and I'll talk about that in a second, but they know what covers work. And so they will put that on there, and then that's money you wouldn't have gotten. And now they start paying you a royalty fee and they're working your book and it can turn off. I had a buddy of mine who wrote one on mini habits, Stephen Geis, and it's been a perennial bestseller in America. And sure enough, he had a Japanese company do that where they approached him and he's like, I'll give it a try. And they came back with this ugly cover. I mean, it just looked, it was like black and white, you know, it had, of course, you know, Chinese characters on it. There wasn't anything to it. It would have just looked like nothing. And so he was all mad and he was like, but what, he didn't have the right to tell him no, because that was in his contract. Like they could make these decisions. So sure enough, like 1 month later, he gets this huge check in the mail and he looks and it was like the #3 best-selling book in Japan. And like, I mean, that company made bank. He made way more money than he would have. And kind of find out the minimalistic approach to a cover was exactly what fit that self-help group in Japan. Whereas his was like a peaceful drop of water and, you know, into a thing of water with a butterfly. Japan just wanted black and white. So to go back to your question is that it's not just, you know, that component, but there's also this growing component of international rights as well. If this book is great in America, it can probably do good in Germany. You just haven't done anything there. Let us translate it, do all the work, and get it into the German market. You've proven to us it will sell because the Americans love it. We can do that in Germany. And we're just seeing more and more of that as well.
What's a baseline number of sales for them to even consider you then?
That really depends. That's a really hard question to answer because, you know, it comes back to market size. You know, I would say that in Japan, it doesn't surprise me that his minimalistic, you know, self-help topic was this publishing company that approached him specializes in that general area. And they just looked in America and saw what books were ranking #1 in Amazon and started looking at them, looking at their reviews, looking at their sales, and coming back and be like, hey, this is a winner. Let's approach this guy. Let's see if he'll be okay with it. And so that's kind of what these publishing companies are doing. They're staying within their line, right? If they're a fantasy publisher, then they're looking at fantasy books. And most of the time, they're not just fantasy books. They're more like epic war fantasy, or lit RPG. I'm sure there's a bunch of fantasy lit RPG publishing companies sniping American lit RPG writers as we speak to get them into their country. So
Interesting. I have a couple of questions that are very specific that one of our members that couldn't be here asked, and then I wanted to ask you a little bit about social media. So let me ask these questions, and if you can't answer them, that's fine. If I am not skilled graphically, do you have any sort of options in regard to the design of an ad, or must I use third-party applications? You're really not about placing an ad though, right?
well,
You're more.
so I'll preface, one of the lessons I tell people is there are a lot of people online that say, try to be everywhere. I do not believe in that at all. People are like, hey, be on Pinterest, be on Facebook, be on Twitter, build an email list, do this. What ends up happening for authors is that when they try to be everywhere, they end up nowhere. If you dabble in all these things, you'll never gain any foothold. And so what I try to tell people is the best thing an author can do is like do 2 or 3 things and do them amazing. You will see a much better ROI. So I preference the questions we have here in that I'll be the first to tell you I am not good at social media. And you know what? I didn't have to be in order to raise the success I did on my books. I just didn't. I did choose to be an Amazon ads guy. I really studied that. And I would say that I'm, in the top 1% on how to handle those because I just dug in. I didn't spend time doing this other thing over here. I just got really good at that. I really focused on building my email list, tactics beyond just say, hey, sign up for my email, but like creating little mini books that are connected to the book they just read. And then convincing them, hey, do you want to get the inside scoop on this character? Do you want to hear how that guy got his scars? And that drives. And so it's those like little tactics there that really move the needle. Now, as I came out with more books, I would gain another skill. I'd, try something new as well. And so my palette, if you will, has increased over time. So I would say that person who asked that question is that if you believe that this is going against the grain and maybe there's something that's more in line for you, you may want to think about that. Now, if that's not the case, and just to go back to actually answering the question, I would say that if you don't have an eye for graphics, okay, then you may want to have somebody else do it, because just like we learn in book covers, right? A bad book cover could just destroy any book. It doesn't matter how good it is, right? Well, same thing can go with your advertisement. A bad advertisement or a bad image will only increase the cost per click and may make your entire advertisement efforts a failure. Not because the advertisement is bad, not because the book is bad, but because the one component. So if you really doubt your skills in that, you may want to get some help on it, or you could be pushing money down the drain. And my last statement on this too, and this is another lesson that I really try to push on people, is treat Facebook ads, treat Amazon ads, treat email, treat them like a skill. Okay. It's not a tactic. It's not a thing to do. It is a skill to learn. And in order to truly learn a skill, okay, to actually like master a skill, and by master, I mean, you are intuitive about the right decisions. You know what you're doing. Like the people who are really successful, they've got this. What it comes down to is knowledge plus experience. When you combine those two things together, you create intuition, and intuition is what we call mastery in today's day. Knowledge plus experience. What I find a lot of authors will do is they'll get a course on, Facebook ads for authors or something like that, and they'll watch it. Okay, great. And they've got some good knowledge there, a good base. And then what they'll do is they'll shift over and they'll dabble in a couple of ads. And then, oh man, immediately they don't see the thing they want. So then they're like, this doesn't work. And they pivot and they go somewhere else. The way that I think an author should really approach it is like, oh man, I just lost some money, or I just paid some money to learn how not to do it. I'm going to keep it again. I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to do it again. I am going to stick with this because I know it's going to work and I'll figure it out. And when you do that, that is when you're going to start really gaining the real experience that needs to be there. And you combine that with continuing to learn. And that's when all of a sudden it just clicks. You know what to do. You know where to put things. Your next book is even more successful. So if you don't think of it like a skill and you just think of it like a tactic, you're probably going to fail immediately unless you just get lucky. So that's another way to look at that question as well.
He had a second part. So the second part of the question was, can you provide data regarding when and where my ad should run based on my ad content? Is there a difference in CPM, CPC, CPA for running the ads at different times or in different GEOs? I don't know what any of that means.
The answer is it's going to depend. The thing about marketing is that there's not one number or one baseline for everything. I would say that, the fry cooker RV, no matter what that person does, is probably going to have a hard time seeing the kind of success that a different author will do. However, though, if that fry cooker RV person really knows their Facebook ads, like we talked about, actually understands that as a skill, they're going to only target those who have shown interest in fry cookers and those who have shown interest in RVs. And they're probably going to have an amazing cost per click. Okay. Like, I mean, they're going to be slamming and getting, conversions like crazy. Now, are they going to make $1 million? No, because that market it's not that big. It will never be that big, but they're going to see some beautiful numbers. Whereas the other person may have to have a really high cost per click in order to see their conversion on their fantasy book, right? Because they weren't able to break it down. Let me give you an example of a advanced tactic we once did that saw huge sales. And I just want to give this as an idea of what it looks like when you do it right. Okay. And this was actually for Amazon ads. It wasn't for Facebook ads. This person wrote a hard science fiction book. Okay. And for those who don't know, hard science is like science fiction that's really, really close to using real information to talk about science fiction. So for example, The Martian is hard science. And if somebody hasn't seen it, Watney gets trapped on Mars. He uses real stuff that actually would work to somehow build himself a habitat, survive months beyond where he was supposed to. It's all about the survivability, the calculations, the information. So we call that hard science, right? Well, we were doing this advertisement, and instead we took a pivot, and instead of just advertising like every other book on the term hard science or science fiction, right? Because if we did that, then our cost per click would be high because we're competing against a whole bunch of people. We decided to go after quantum physics books. And here's why. Because people who are on Amazon searching for quantum physics books are probably some science nerds, right? Well, science nerds love hard science fiction. And so instead of competing with every other hard science fiction author, we went after an area where nobody was spending advertisement on, but it is the right market, right? I'm actually a physics nerd. I got my degree in physics, became a nuclear engineer. I love quantum mechanics. I love those books. I love to read them. And I know full well that as I'm shopping for, or if I'm looking for a textbook or something like that, yeah, you can totally convince me that, oh, look at that cool hard science fiction book. And since nobody else was competing, our cost per click was super low. Our conversion rates were really high and became an extremely profitable advertisement. But it was that what I call tertiary thinking that happened. And so I'm always looking for those because I've had experience on when you think like that, you can find a lot higher chance of success. And I would say that's that intuition kicking in.
Great tip. Thank you. I have one last question. And then if Ruth has any, I'll open it up. But I know you did an article recently about tips for social media, and I was wondering if you might like to share them because you said it wasn't really your thing. So I'm especially curious what you wrote.
Yeah. So the tips for social media, the big thing is like kind of the lessons that we just talked about. Pick one, really. Like try not to live on all of them. Okay. The other thing too is that if you're not natural or if you don't feel good in that social media, you don't understand it, you're just going to be shooting yourself in the foot. Okay. The worst thing you could ever do is show up to Reddit and talk about your book. Those people will roast you. Okay. Or if you go to Goodreads, that can also be, if you don't understand how it works in Goodreads, you're going to be a pariah and they're going to eat you alive. Now, not all of the social media is mean like that, but if you don't understand how Instagram works and you're just taking pictures, and you're not using hashtags, you're not studying on how to engage with people, like it's a waste. If you think Twitter is about finding some article and republishing it, like that's not going to do anything for you. So my point on all of the social media is that if you don't actually enjoy it and want it to be a part of things, if you don't actually want to take the time to truly understand what makes that platform social, it's going to be 100% waste of your time. And then what I find a lot of authors do is they spend all this time being everywhere. I need to be on Twitter, Pinterest, TikTok. TikTok's a new thing. I should be on there because somebody talked about their success on it. I would highly recommend just choose one and do a really good job with it. Understand it. You'll get way more out of it than dabbling in 5. So that said is that we broke down all of the different social media out there and talked about the pros and cons, as well as gave, case studies, as well as articles that would teach you. So you can go through the list. You can find all of the social media that is shown to help certain authors really thrive and make sales. Okay. We discussed its pros and cons. Then we list out where you can learn more, as well as case studies. And then you can move on to the next one. So I like to look at that article as a place where an author can start to kind of think or choose the one that they want to really dive in. And then after that, it's off to the races.
What a terrific resource your website is for authors. And I hope everybody who's watching this will go right to that website with kindlepreneur.com and read up, because I think you'll get a tremendous amount of insight. Ruth, do you have any other questions?
Actually, no, I just want to thank Dave. Dave, this has been, first of all, it's been fun to actually talk to you and not just a podcast. So thank you for being a real person.
No problem.
And hope the kids are okay.
They're good. They're good.
But you've answered my questions. Thank you so much.
Well, yes, ma'am. Well, thank you so much.
Dave, it's been wonderful. I can't thank you enough for spending time with us. And I'll make sure that this is available not only to my RWA group, but to my Sisters in Crime group as well.
Awesome. Well, and again, thank you for having me.
Thank you. You have a great day.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.